Barragán from California.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, one day ago, the President went on another Twitter rant after the judge halted the Muslim ban. This was one of his tweets, and hopefully you can see it. It says, "I have instructed Homeland Security to check people coming over into our country very carefully." Very carefully is in all capital letters. My question is, what was DHS not doing before this order that you are now doing? In other words, this order, which was post the judge's ruling.
First of all, I can see it because it's big enough to see from this seat. We are doing business as normal now that we're, right from the beginning, we quickly adjusted to obey every one of the judge's rulings. So we're back to normal operations, if you will, and doing nothing different today than we were doing before. That is to say, when someone comes in, as long as they have the right paperwork and all of that kind of thing, they're allowed to enter. If there's something that the officer at the counter, so to speak, doesn't like or suspects of something, they would be taken aside for additional screening. That's ops normal.
So there's nothing new as a result of this order that the President tweeted out, that now he's given an order that you're supposed to do it very carefully? Because this insinuates that we were not doing it very carefully.
Right.
So I just want to clarify, there's no new order here, right?
The men and women that work the counters always do their business very carefully.
So this is not a new order, correct, Mr. Secretary?
We didn't have to see the President's concern about what has taken place post federal ruling. Continue to do things very carefully.
Okay, thank you. Are there any specific examples, any evidence of any recent refugees from the 7 listed countries that may have slipped through DHS in the recent past? Do we have any evidence of that?
Well, if they slipped through, we wouldn't have any evidence because we wouldn't know that they'd slipped through.
Well, there's an instance where they may have slipped through, and through intelligence, could have stopped some activity or a plot. Do you have any evidence that somebody maybe slipped through from one of these 7 countries that you now know about?
Let me take that for the record.
Okay. Earlier, you well, do you know how many countries there are where we do not have an embassy?
I don't offhand. But I know that in the case of the 7 countries we're dealing with, most of them do not have functioning embassies. And as you know, I think when we leave, generally speaking, another embassy will take up, certain duties to help us out in that country.
So would you say there's more than 7 countries where we don't have an embassy?
I would guess there are, but I'd have to take that for the record. I'll get with State Department to find out specifically, but I'll get that answer to you.
Okay. Well, according to your testimony, one of the reasons for the 7 countries is that we don't know. You said, I don't know how we would vet people where there is no embassy. So my question is, do you think it would be safer for us to close down our borders to all those countries where we don't have an embassy? That kind of follows the rationale that I'm...
If there are countries, and I'm not sure there are, but if there are countries, I guess there is, but if there are countries that we don't have an embassy that we have not put on this, it's because we have confidence that the structure, police, intelligence, that kind of thing, is still operating to the degree that we can have confidence that individuals are at least who they say they are, and we have some background information on them.
Okay. You testified earlier that there was no chaos at CBP. Is that correct?
I said there was no chaos where CBP were working at the airports, yes.
Okay. Well, I went down to LAX on Saturday night, and there was chaos. Now, let me tell you, there was chaos in the terminals at Bradley International Airport. Now, I got there, and I asked to speak with somebody from CBP. Conveniently, the office was shut down. So I couldn't ask a question of somebody in the office. I asked to be taken down to speak to somebody at CBP, but they wouldn't take us anywhere. So I couldn't see it for myself. We heard from people coming off planes. There was dozens of people being detained. When I called CBP asking for a briefing just to find out if any of my constituents were being held, given access to an attorney, I was told to call a 202 Washington number, and then I was hung up on. How are we to know that there was no chaos down there? Members of Congress couldn't even see for themselves.
Well, you can take my word for it. If my people in CVP say there was no chaos, that they were doing their normal job at the counters with people coming into the United States, most of whom were allowed to pass. Those that needed additional screening were put aside. This is normal, everyday operations in any airport in the United States. There was no chaos. Their job normally would not be, I mean, it would be unusual for someone to say, hey, I'm a congresswoman and I want to talk to people in CVP. In my opinion, they need to do jobs on the spot. There is a 24-hour watch at DHS headquarters. I can report to you that more than one of your colleagues called the right number. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I was engaged throughout the night with members of Congress. And again, most of what I was getting was very anecdotal. I'm not saying that you didn't see what you saw, but there is a process to engage this DHS leadership. And the people that are on the front lines are down there doing their job, and in the normal course of events don't interact with members of Congress.
I'll yield back since my time is up.
His time has expired. The gentleman